Hey, everybody, welcome back to Lettermen Row. I am Austin Ward, joined by Jeremy Birmingham and Spencer Holbrook. This is the Byers Auto practice report. Yep, practice report is back because we're just a couple weeks away. We're going to start pretending like it's already here now. Looking at this Ohio State team as they get ready for March 19th, they've got 15 early enrollees. Birmingham and Spencer have been talking about them for a long time as recruits. They know the ins and outs of their game. I hopefully know how they might fit in on this roster, and together we'll put it together. They tackled Spencer did on Lettermen Row earlier this week. Some four guys who might not be getting enough attention heading into camp. Really, you could say that all of them now are a little bit of underdogs as they try and compete on a roster that is one of the most loaded, top 2 or 3 in the country. Plenty of veterans coming back, despite lots of people throwing around references to this being one of the least experienced teams in America. I think the Buckeyes are going to be just fine with the talent that they've recruited over the last couple of years. But when you look at these early enrollees, Berm, who's the one that you kind of point to and say, this is a sneaky under-the-radar guy here?
I'm going to just start by saying that I think in a class of this size, the 21 class, the 21 members of it, when you have a lot of big-time names like Jack Sawyer, Trey Henderson, Emeka Ibuka, Kyle McCord, Donovan Jackson, et cetera, there's a real possibility that 15 or 16 guys get sort of under the radar status because everyone wants to focus on the biggest names in the group. But to me, the one that has the opportunity to really rise up and make something happen and get on the field early is Jansen Dunn, the 4-star linebacker sized defensive back from Bowling Green, Kentucky. He is 6'2". He's 215 pounds. He can run. He has like a 42-inch vertical. He is physical. He is athletic enough to play wide receiver. And I think the fact that he's one of the 2 early enrollees in the defensive backfield gives him an opportunity to really get a leg up.
Seems like you were trying not to call him a bullet there.
Yeah, I don't believe that exists.
All right, Spencer, you named 4. Who do you have the most belief in from the under the radar picks that you threw out there?
I'm gonna go with Evan Pryor because I think this is a guy who in any other class in the country or any other Ohio State class for that matter would probably be talked about as competing for the starting running back job because he's versatile. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's been compared to a lot of like the Alvin Kamara or Christian McCaffrey guys that can make their hay in running routes in the backfield, getting handoffs, but instead he's getting overshadowed by Travion Henderson and all the talent that's in that running back room. I don't know if he'll compete right away for a starting spot. Actually, I don't think he will, but I think he's going to surprise a lot of people in spring practice because I think too many people have forgotten about him and focused maybe even a little too much on what Travion Henderson could potentially do as a freshman.
Both of you tried to, more Berm than Spencer tried to talk me out of this pick, but there's no question to me that the most important early enrollee is Jesse Mirko from Down Under. You guys hear me talk about this every single year when I'm asked about who's the true freshman that's going to help, who's going to make an instant impact for the Buckeyes. If you're Ohio State, you don't want that to happen. Even if you have the best number 1 rated recruit in the country, number 1 player, it's very hard for them to come in and transition to contribute to a program that's trying to win a national title as a true freshman. There's so much to learn. There's so much physical development that is required. The culture, all of it is very hard to do, even if you do enroll early. It happens. I'm not suggesting that it doesn't, but it also is a problem for your program if you're constantly leaning on these freshmen to help, because it means that your previous recruiting classes aren't being developed, or you had the wrong guys, or you were evaluating improperly with what you had before. So that's a long-winded way of saying that Ohio State needs a punter, and a true freshman punter can help, especially if he's 23 years old and mature and physical and coming out of the Pro Kick Australia, where we've seen so many guys have that success, including at Ohio State with Cam Johnston. So I know that Ohio State doesn't want to use its punter much, but this is the guy who has the clearest path to playing time.
That's my point. You say you don't want to rely on freshmen, but you also don't want to punt. But you have to. Sometimes you have to, right?
Okay.
And so I think especially the reason I'm going with Jansen Dunn here is because as you look at the Ohio State secondary, it's been talked about ad nauseum for the last 7 months. there is a wide open opportunity for someone to step up and make plays. And I think that Jansen Dunn is a Malik Hooker type safety potentially. And to me, that's why he's the guy. There is somebody that has to go back there that is able to just do things, and he's going to get an opportunity. The early enroll, the fact that the positions are sort of up in the air right now in the secondary with Matt Barnes coming in and taking over a greater responsibility in that room, I think it's sort of a fresh start for dudes. And I think that that gives a guy like Jansen Dunn, who Matt Barnes was the recruiter for. So there's a little, kumbaya moment there. Those guys are homies. Like, this is where you get an opportunity for a young guy to step up. Now, again, I don't think that Ohio State ever wants someone to be a true freshman starter in the secondary. I think that if that's the case, it's because you're in trouble or because that player is just so much better than most guys are. And I don't think Jansen Dunn is in that role yet. But what we saw out of Marcus Hooker, the inconsistency with him, with Josh Proctor, Bryson Shaw didn't really find his niche, Ronnie Hickman being unable to stay on the field for a number of different reasons. It's just a matter of, hey, this guy has an opportunity and he's physical enough to make a play.
I'm not trying to undercut the point of
you love punters, admit it.
Yeah, I do love punters, and I'm not trying to diminish the point of what we're talking about here, which is identifying these true freshmen who could and might help right away. But I always look at it, the guys who have 1 year, it's more about a redshirt freshman or a sophomore player, because they start being forgotten after 1 year. Now, Lathan Ransom doesn't really fit that bill because we all saw what he can do late in the season. But, think about the way that we talked about Cameron Martinez right here numerous times after he signed in February last year, and the versatility that he brings potentially to the secondary. Like, there's a bunch of guys like that are already in the program who've now, got to go through a winter conditioning program or a full year of going through meetings and understanding the system. Spencer and I were talking about this earlier in the week, that when it came to the quarterbacks, that I still think that even though last year was so bizarre and that there were times where it was only on Zoom or, you didn't get non-conference games to play and get those reps, that 1 year is still very significant for C.J. Stroud and Jack Miller as compared to Kyle McCord. Certainly doesn't mean that at that position or any other that you can't make up the ground this spring. I'm a buzzkill when it comes to this, when I just say that it's a reminder of how challenging it would be for anybody to do that. And that goes all the way to the top with some Jack Sawyer, whoever else you want to put in there. It's rare for those guys to actually make that kind of impact that you notice as a true freshman.
And that is why I made sure to say that they would surprise in the spring and not during the season. So then they would turn heads in the spring. So when a third-team offense trots out there and you see maybe instead of one of the guys who's been on the roster, you see Evan Pryor as the tailback. You're like, oh, maybe he flashed in the spring and earned some carries. So I caught both of you because I made sure to say that it was in the spring and not during the season.
Well, again, Austin did ask for the under-the-radar type players at the beginning of this video. So here we got a little gotcha moment there, because you're asking for guys that are not the cream of the proverbial crop here and the top of the board guys. It's easy to say Jack Sawyer is going to play as a freshman. He's going to. Travion Henderson is going to play as a freshman. How much? Who knows? How much are they going to impact the game? Who knows? Emeka Egbuka is going to play. I don't. Marvin Harrison is going to play. These kids are going to play football for Ohio State. The question are their minutes going to be impactful? Are their minutes going to be in key situations? Or are they going to be the guys trotting out there at the end of the second quarter against Bowling Green when you're up 49-0? So these are the things that you have to weigh. And there is so much value now in early enrolling because these guys get onto campus, they get this year, and then they get the early minutes. And so then you start to build out your career. And you look at a guy like Lathan Ransom. Lathan did not early enroll, and that just goes to show you exactly how good he is, because he did not enroll early and was still the true freshman on the defensive side of the ball that made the biggest impact for Ohio State last
year. Yeah, and I mean, if I was looking at it, a place where the greatest opportunity exists for a young guy, a true freshman maybe, that, I just don't think it'll be in the defensive secondary, because other than Sean Wade, there's so much, now experience coming back, plus complementing that with maybe a healthy Ronnie Hickman. and Lathan Ransom that we talked about, then throw in legend Cavazos or Ryan Watts. And there's just a bunch of people who've been around now that, I don't think that they're going to get leapfrogged on the depth chart. Now, linebacker, that's a position that was wiped out with 4 seniors leaving. I think it's pretty hard as the cliche, the closer you get to the ball, the harder it is. So maybe it's wiser to choose wide receivers and defensive backs. But I think, an opportunity would be more readily available if Reed Carrico, was one of those rare generational talents. I don't know that he is or isn't. He's going to have a lot to prove in the transition from a much smaller level of football. But, linebacker is probably the spot you would circle where the best opportunity lies for somebody to try and get in there. Everywhere else, you mentioned the wide receivers, Berm, that's still going to be tough considering the 4, the 3 that they signed a year ago, and then having, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and Jamison Olave back. That's a tough row to go. Tight end, maybe you throw Hart in there, but you have Cade Stover and Joe Royer complimenting Jeremy Ruckert. They're probably fine there. Really, everywhere else, you're pretty much solidified, in my opinion, going into spring. But linebacker, I don't know what's going to happen. It's a little bit of a crapshoot, even though you have some of those older guys we've talked about a bunch, like Taraja Mitchell and Kayvon Pope and on down, Dallas Gant on down the right.
But that just speaks of Ohio State in general. Here you go. You lose 4 senior linebackers and you're replacing them with 3 senior linebackers. Like, what the hell? That's pretty bizarre. That doesn't happen very often. And then you have Mitchell Melton and Cody Simon, who have earned rave reviews from the Ohio State coaching staff in the last 6 months. Those 2 are going to play quite a bit. Tommy Eichenberg is a guy that's still fighting for his moments and his roles. And, I think the interesting thing is there's 3 guys that I really feel like could make an impact that are in the class of 2021 that haven't enrolled early, and they're going to be kind of glossed over because they're not going to arrive until June, and now it's late June as opposed to early June. But that's Donovan Jackson at offensive guard. He is a different type of dude. Like, Donovan Jackson is not your basic freshman offensive lineman. He is going to push for the 2 deep right away, and it might be nasty enough to play for Ohio State early. And then, again, we'll probably go back and forth on this about the defensive backs, but Jordan Hancock and J.K. Johnson are top of the board, top 30 corners in the country. Those 2 are better prospects. They have higher ceilings than anybody on the current roster does. And if they get in and buy into the program and take care of their bodies right away, I think it's going to be hard for those 2 to stay off the field.
And I think one name, Austin, you mentioned being close to the ball. It's very hard to get on the field, but I think one name that's being overlooked a little bit, and you guys know that I really like this guy, but I really like what Tyleik Williams brings to this defense. I think, Ohio State doesn't get a lot of 330-pound guys on that defensive line. They really don't go after the run stuffers very often, but when you get one, it just seems like he always finds a way to get on the field early because you can't really replace that kind of size and you can't teach that kind of size. I think, especially in the Big Ten schedule, when you play some of these run-heavy teams, a guy like Tyleik Williams, if he can impress early, can really just be on the field and be one of the rotational guys on the defensive line. I know Larry Johnson likes to take his time and teach guys the way he wants to teach them, but I think when you have a guy with that kind of size, it's hard to keep him off the field if you need a run stuffer.
Williams is extremely quick, too. I mean, he's a kind of a cross between Devon Hamilton and B.B. Landers in the style that he plays. He is Devon Hamilton size, but very quick off the ball, very good with his hands. And then there's, the big fish, JT Tuimoloau, who is still out there unsigned. And if he ends up committing and signing with Ohio State, I think he's just going to start on day 1. So we'll just talk about that later.
Well, I mean, maybe that would change my answer from Jesse Mirko if that happened.
Maybe.
Probably not, because this was the under the radar show, and he's an under the radar guy who's going to start for the Buckeyes on day 1. So I win. This has been the Byers Auto practice report. Couple weeks away, but we're still ready to start talking about Ohio State in the spring and getting back to maybe a more normal year of football. That's Birmingham and Spencer Holbrook. I am Austin Ward. Going to go buy a card. Make sure you use Byers Auto, and then come read more about the Ohio State Buckeyes with us at lettermenrow.com.